Okay. And so, first of all, I'd like to say hello to everyone and thank you for being here. So, this is our Feedback Friday show and share. I'm never quite sure exactly, I haven't defined the exact name of it, but it's this appointment we give each other once a month where some of our members from the Biophilic Hub come on board and they tell us a bit their journey. Okay, so we have spoken to some people who are interior designers. I have spoken to a person who is an actual product designer. And today we have with us Mike Peterson and Linda Kafka from Science in Design. Now, Science in Design is in fact the name of a project, okay, which was launched a long time ago. And would I say that it is a kind of educational dash awareness project, okay? So to keep us all on our toes in the built industry, and I say the built industry in general, so not just interior designers, but I'm speaking about architects, contractors, making us all aware of the role which we have in creating healthy environments, not just wellness, but healthy environments for the people where we work, we live, we study, and we get better. So a little background, of course, everybody wants to start off saying, I want to make a beautiful place. I want to make a place where someone feels good. But there's so much more behind it. Okay, so something which is intuitive. Linda and Mike have put together all the science which they have gathered from many conversations you have had into this project called Science in Design. Now, Mike, I will pass first over to you because I know that I came into contact with you through another person which we know in common, which is not only Don Ruggles. So I would like you to start with you and then pass on to Linda to tell us your personal story and how you got to delve so deep into the science behind design.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having us, Adil. We're delighted to be here. This is a subject that has become a passion for both of us, pretty much. And for me, it started, and I love telling the story. But for me, it started on December 15th, 2015. I had spent most of my career in the publishing business and was a publisher of a luxury design magazine in the United States. And in the course of my business, I happened to have lunch with an architect in Denver, Colorado. And so I wanted to sell him some advertising, and all he wanted to do was talk about how beauty improves health. And so that architect is Don Ruggles, who went on to become the author of Beauty, Neuroscience, and Architecture, went on to become my mentor. I consider myself his acolyte, and the subject just so took me that realizing that if beauty improves health, and we now know that that's documented, and designers create beauty, then the logical follow is that designers improve health. And so I started my own personal quest, then learning and started to speak on it. And during one of those moments of speaking on the subject, I met this fascinating talent out of Toronto, Linda Kafka, who essentially said, hey, you know what, let's partner on this. And so for the last 4 years, Linda and I have been partnering on the whole subject of science in design, which is essentially science's ability to document, calculate our physiological responses to beauty and pleasure. And we truly are on a mission right now to help the design, all of the collective design industries understand that their value proposition is far greater than creating just a pretty room. The value proposition is recognized by science as being an alternative health resource. And frankly, we need to start owning that as an industry. We need to buck up and say, okay, hey, you know what? I believe science. I believe the neuroscientist. I believe the medical industry. And I need to start having the confidence as a designer to be out in the marketplace saying, yes, I'm an alternative health resource. And so that's kind of where I am, and I'll let Linda fill in and provide some color commentary. Linda?
Thank you. So my path to this was a little bit different. My background is marketing, very much like Mike's. Spent my whole career in marketing, and it was in 2006 that I started to enter into the architect world. And I think more importantly, in 2009, I was hired. Now I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I was hired by an organization to repurpose a building that was formerly used for showrooms for retailers to come and do their purchasing from. And this particular facility also had Canada's only furniture show. So I developed Canada's first design center, and my mandate was to drive designers to the building. And what better way to do that than through education? So I, really focused on bringing cutting edge education to the design center. So I was the one that was really advocating for interior designers, looking for what's new, what's next, what they should be knowing about, how is it going to improve their business, how is it going to change their lives. And then in 2019, Saloni featured an exhibit called Space for Being with Susan McSalmon from the Johns Hopkins. She's the CEO of the International Minds and Arts Lab. She teamed up with Ivy Ross from Google, and they worked with Suchi Reddy, who is a neuroaesthetic architect. And if you went to Saloni, you might have remembered they had 3 experiential rooms. And as somebody that was always ahead of the game when it came to education and bringing really important content to the design community in Canada, I was just blown away with this, and I thought this is exactly where design needs to go. Now, prior to this, we were looking at LEED. As you can see, I'm well AP accredited, so we're looking at the indoor environments and how it affects our 11 body systems. But neuroaesthetics really focused on how we feel. So when we looked at prior, how form follows function, what neuroaesthetics and what they were doing in Milan was really about how form follows feeling. And
I would like to ask you, sorry to interrupt, if you can describe it, because I remember this exhibition. It was a really strong exhibition with the bracelet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what it was that sort of stood out for you in this experience that you felt, I've got to get this out?
Well, it was really about the fact that designers intuitively knew that they that they really improve mood, they improve health, but it wasn't validated. And it wasn't until that exhibit that we actually had tools, and they were Google tools, which, they don't have them on the market through Google at this point, but they were tools to really identify how you actually, how those spaces actually made you feel. And surprisingly, a lot of designers thought the rooms that they thought that they liked the most were not the rooms that actually calmed them down or made them feel better. And so I think that was really pivoting for me, or riveting for me, because it was really about, not just how beautiful it is and hearing somebody say that it's beautiful, but the feeling that you actually got when you were in that space. And so 6 months later, here I am, and I attend every High Point market. I attend a lot of these Maison and Saloni, a lot of these events. And I'm at High Point. I'm literally, it's the last day of my time there. My car is packed. I'm ready to go home. I've got my husband with me, and he wants to leave. And I just had this urge. I said, I've got to go see one more presentation. I just don't feel I got what I needed out of this market. And lo and behold, there was a presentation on design harmony by Mike Petrson in one of the luxury showrooms. I walked in, to my amazement, the room was packed with designers. Here walks in Canada, and I'm like, I've got to be part of this. And I listened to the presentation that Mike delivered, and everything came full circle to me. At that moment, I realized this is what the design industry needs to know about. They need to really understand it. They need to understand how and why they improve health. And from there, Mike and I just blossomed together, bringing this content primarily to the American market, but we do have a global audience.
Absolutely, absolutely, because it's a global fact. We all want to feel good in where we are, and all want to heal where we are. So when we speak about science, obviously we're speaking about facts and about data. Okay. So I do like, grounding things with numbers, okay? Because otherwise, people, don't quite understand exactly the entity and the scope of what is happening. So I wanted to ask you, can you help us understand with some figures how does science read design? How does it support it? And
Well,
what data do we have?
I'm going to answer you in two different ways. The first is that to us, the word science in design applies to multiple. It's almost like science in design is an umbrella, and the umbrella has multiple spokes. So one spoke may be neuroaesthetics, which we can talk about. One spoke may be biophilia. One spoke may be truly the new software and technology that's available. It's all part of the science aspect in design. For instance, and we can get to specific classes and studies in a minute, but we currently have software now that can actually predict where the mind's eye will be attracted upon seeing a new image. It's called visual attention software, and it relies on our inherited evolutionary inheritance that we're prone to looking for certain things in an image. We are, as a people, we're prone to being attracted to edges, to color contrast, to color intensity, and of course to faces. And so using that data, that knowledge, this software which is built by 3M in the United States can actually measure. If you take a rendering of a project and run it through their software, the software will tell you where the mind's eye will go first, second, third, fourth, where it will be concentrated. So it's particularly powerful in helping in packaged goods design. It's huge right now. Think about what it's like to walk down the aisle of a supermarket and you're being barraged with different packages, different colors, different shapes, different fonts. Which one of those is going to attract your attention? Your first glance vision is what they call it. We also have software now, and we're promoting both of these to our members and the people that are associated with the science and design. This other software that Linda knows more about than I do is called iMotions. iMotions is able to measure emotional, get this now, emotional reactions to an image. So imagine being an interior designer. You have a client in the conference room and you show that client 30 or 40 different images over a 30, 40-minute time period. This software can now actually measure what the emotion that you're experiencing as you see a particular image. Now you put that together with the vast software that predicts where attention will go, and you've got software and technology now that can actually be a roadmap for design. And I mean, just think about what that does to elevate the whole design industry, architects and interior designers.
So can
you
mix this with, for example, developing a rendering for a room?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's actually a plugin for Photoshop. As a matter of fact, Odell, if you'd like me to share my screen, I can give you an example of what Mike's talking about for your audience so that they can see.
Okay.
So I'm going to just share with you now. This is a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm not going to put it in viewers mode, but can you all see? Can you, Odell, can you see the image?
Yes, I can see.
So this particular image, Biophilic designed, the designer wanted to achieve certain things. They wanted to keep the eye within the space. They wanted to really make you feel comfortable in that space. And they didn't want you at first glance for you, when you looked at their rendering, to look out the window. And so I wanted to show you when this particular piece was run through the vast technology that Mike talked about, this is the result that we ended up getting. So you can see here that the first unconscious, we're talking about the unconscious mind. And this is what we are designing for, because 95% of your decisions are made unconscious. Only 5% of your decisions are made consciously. And so this particular biophilic designer achieved quite a nice balance in that room. If you look at the percentages, the eye went immediately to the artwork on the wall. It went down onto the sofa and to the accessories by the sofa. Then it went over to the stairs. So you've got that risk and peril there. Went back to the sofa. And then finally it landed over at where the sunlight is. And so this allows you to really put your renderings through and see where your client's eyes are. If the client's eyes had gone directly out the window and missed all of the elements in the room, you wouldn't be achieving what you're trying to achieve in terms of creating an environment that really makes them feel comfortable, excite them, feel you calm them down, and so on. Mike, did you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is a perfect follow-up, because I had mentioned things like color contrast and edges. So look at what's getting attention here, and the most attention. Your edges of the stairwell, you have, you have the different steps. So you have a series of edges getting a lot of attention, and you have the color contrast of the tree in the work of art. So that's what our ancient brain is interested in being receptive to. That's the connection to our evolutionary inheritance, because just think about what it was like a million years ago when you come to the edge of a cliff. That's an edge that you don't want to go over. Or if it's an edge of a rock outcropping over a stream, can I make that 6-foot jump? I know this sounds a little crazy, but whether we like it or not, we don't have a choice. This is in our DNA. It's embedded in our physiology and our brain. And so that's why designing for the whole concept of designing for the subliminal brain, the unconscious mind, is what should really be prevailing in the world of architecture and interior design. We find it interesting that, designers in our industry will stand and look over colors and patterns and textures for hour upon hour, always with using our conscious mind. The problem is that designing for the conscious mind isn't as valuable as designing for the unconscious mind or the subliminal brain, because think about it in architecture. If you're a builder, and again, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but in the States, we have just hundreds of new home tracks, or groups of homes all stacked together. And the idea of curb appeal is extraordinarily important. And we now know that someone driving through a community looking for a home, the builder has up to 3 seconds to grab the attention of that person driving through the community, because the first 3 seconds are when the unconscious mind is in control, before the conscious mind kicks in. It's that classic approach or avoid that we've all heard about from our ancestral world. So the way to read this, by the way, is that there's a 64% chance that the stairwell will be viewed in the first 3 seconds of viewing this image, 66% for the artwork on the wall. This is what's game changing for our industry right now.
Let me just show one other image here. There's another one.
There you go.
Yeah. So if you were, now you can use this not just for your renderings, but you can and have that discussion with your clients and rearrange and go from good to great design by using this type of information and knowledge. But you can also use it for your websites, for your marketing, and so on. So in the Science and Design, that's what we talk about. We talk about a lot about the unconscious mind, and how you need to be designing for the human, to really, because it's as humans, we constantly are avoiding pain. We don't want to be in a pain type of situation. We want to be in a pleasurable situation. So we're always seeking that. And so you've got to look at the designing for the unconscious mind, not for the conscious mind. Once it comes to the conscious mind, the decisions already have been made, because it's our survival instinct. And that's what we talk about in the science and design, helping you understand the human being and designing for the human.
So I wanted to ask a question. So with respect to this data and to this software, okay. I think the last slide clearly showed that the fire, the butterfly, and the
Vase, yeah.
the vase were particularly. So is there a direct correlation between views or nature elements and our attention? Because there is also some figures on, for example, the stripes, and so I don't know if there is there a direct correlation?
Let me bring it back up again. So yes, there is, because as humans, remember, we came from nature, and we seek that. That's just part of who we are, to have that connection, because we feel safe, we feel it's trusted, we feel comfortable with it. And so the fractals in the fireplace, we're attracted to fractals. So all of those elements that you see in there are, we know them already as being safe. Our reptilian brain is making in literally split-second decisions whether this is a safe environment or not a safe environment. So we're looking at that also. But remember what Mike said earlier, we're looking at intensity, we're looking at edges, color contrast, and so on. So those are things that we seek out as humans. When it came to the floor area, or the kitchen area, it might have been because of the hard, sharp edges. And that's why we were subconsciously paying attention to it, because sharp potentially could be dangerous, right? Edges potentially could be dangerous. So within split seconds, our reptilian brain is making decisions. Is this environment safe? Is this a good environment for us to be in? Before it even comes to our conscious mind.
Okay. And this is the technology which you were talking to us about, Mike, isn't it?
Yes, this is, again, it's called VAS, Visual Attention Software, and it's produced by 3M, and it's a very easy software to access, by the way. If you go to the 3M VAS site, they'll actually give you like 7 or 8 different free trial examples to play with. And if you find it valuable for your business, and most people that are introduced to it do indeed find it valuable. I think it's relatively inexpensive. In American dollars, I think it's like $49 a month. And it's used by all major packaged goods companies. It's also used by website designers. And just think about just how important it is if you're clicking through a series of website images, which one is going to stop you in your tracks? And are you designing that landing page, that home page, in order to stop the viewer? So again, things like contrasting colors, sharp contrasting colors, deep color intensity, facial images. I can't emphasize enough. We don't have an Linda, do we have an example? There you go. Thank you, Linda. Take a look at this ad that I produced for one of my clients several months ago. And what you see here, we had tried a few other versions, and we ran them through the software, and it just wasn't working. We weren't getting the response that we wanted. And so we went back to designing for basic VAS principles, which are what our brain is attracted to. And lo and behold, we see the edge of the sofa on the lower left. We see color intensity in the blues. We see fractal patterning and color contrast in the lower right-hand corner. And just very importantly, the facial images, that the way to read this is that there's a 98% chance that the headshot is going to be seen in the first 3 seconds. Now, it's important to understand that just because something grabs our attention, it doesn't mean we find it pleasurable. So you mentioned a little while ago about stripes. If you were to put together a room that would be a combination of stripes and plaids, it would very likely attract our attention, but it may not be pleasurable.
I just want to say here that Sarah Z is a biophilic designer. And so I took it one step further and I grabbed a screenshot of her website. Now, remember, it's really hard to grab screenshots of websites because they do scroll down. So I made sure I put her face in here. She's a biophilic designer. And so her objective was not to have you, look out the window, but kind of keep your gaze within that space. And so this was one of the processes that we can do through this technology. So you can see here, the eye first stopped at her face, then it went over to the biophilic elements on near the TV. It captured the sharp edges, and then it went back to the coffee table. And so I just want to show you the hot mapping here. And again, that shows where the eye landed on her design.
Absolutely.
So you can use it for websites, you can use it for print ads, you can even use it for your own emails, newsletters, emails. You can run your emails through or your newsletters to see that, to ensure that your clients are looking at what you want them to look at. But it's the next software that actually, the iMotions one, that will actually identify from 7 to 9 facial expressions. They just added 2 new ones. Whether it's happy or whether you're confused or angry or upset. When you use that software, again, it's tapping into your subconscious. Your face is giving, it's like a billboard, an emoji billboard, and it's giving away clues to how you feel. And so as designers, if you use that facial recognition software or facial analysis software, you'll be able to understand, if your clients are happy with what they're looking at, confused, upset, angry, and then you can have conversations around that.
So it must be very small changes, because obviously if someone's happy and they're smiling, that is clear. If they're not,
yeah.
Okay, so that's very
So
interesting.
Adil, you did mention, I told you the answer to your original question was 2-part, and there's tons of data and studies around the world of the value of beauty and the value of biophilia and its ability to improve health. The one of the studies that we reference all the time is a study done by the Rusk Institute in New York, where 107 cardiac patients were prescribed to spend time in a nursery, and they spent 30 minutes, each one of them, literally planting flowers. The result was a decrease in the heart rate of 5 beats per minute. So, and that's just, there are just tons of studies like that regarding the science and overall. I mean, so I don't know how many you want to get into on this call.
No. But
they're there.
Yeah, they're there. They're there. I know there are many studies which support this. And but my next question is, and this is where I really want to focus on, the neuroaesthetics as opposed to biophilia. So maybe biophilia has become, I don't say mainstream, but I heard, a lot of people are starting to talk about it. Maybe they don't know the detail, but neuroaesthetics is definitely something which is very new. So science, they're not quite exactly the same. So I would like you to explain to us a bit the two things. And
Linda, do you want to start this one?
Well, I think it's simple. Susan McSalmon, and if you don't know who she is the CEO of the Arts and Minds Lab from Johns Hopkins, and she's recently published a book with Ivy Ross from Google called Your Brain on Art. And I think the way she basically describes it is your brain on beauty, your brain on art, and how it lights up and gets excited when it sees beautiful things. Certainly, if you were to ask Susan, what's the most perfect neuroaesthetic environment, she will immediately say nature. So biophilia is a spoke under the whole neuroaesthetics. Technology is another spoke, and so on. Color and is another spoke. But neuroaesthetics is really about how your brain is getting excited when it sees something beautiful. That's the best, easiest description without going into 17-syllable words and a scientific explanation of neuroaesthetics.
And
Yeah, just,
and when you say when you see something beautiful, are we just talking about art? Because if I'm not mistaken, she talks about art in a general term. Now, I was watching a video the other day. It came across, as it does, my screen, and it was about a concert of a 12 of a girl, and she's 12, singing in this concert in Germany. And you could see people were literally crying because of the beauty of her voice. So I wanted to understand with you, when we speak about art, sometimes it can be personal.
Firstly, it includes everything, from dance to music to art. We at the Science and Design focus on the built environment and our interiors. So it's a little bit different in that respect. But but it's all of the arts, and it is subjective. So what's beautiful to you is not necessarily beautiful to me. And so one of the struggles that I personally had when I ran the design center was when designers would create a formula or a specific style, and then just mimic or use that exact style and do it for their next client and their next client and their next client. And they were known for perhaps maybe, grayish interiors. We really have to get out of that business model and really look at creating designs that are personal, because not everybody likes that particular style and they won't perform well in that particular style. And that's what Science and Design is really trying to help them understand, that it is designing for
So
the
there is a bit of psychology, of design psychology in this as well, I gather.
well, yeah, I think so, because again, the psychology component is to learn from your client what it is that they perceive to be beautiful and pleasurable and aesthetically rewarding. And go back to the important word, neuroaesthetic. Neuro is essentially the physiological, okay? That's what neurology is, the physiological reaction to and responses to events that begin in the brain, and then the word aesthetic. Now, the neuroscience people didn't convert their word to neurobeauty or to neuropleasure. They converted it to neuroaesthetics, and the word aesthetics in itself is a much broader term that Linda referenced. It involves not just visual beauty as perceived by an individual, but it involves all of the senses. We're working actually down here in North Carolina right now. We're working with a coffee company that is building its brand based on aromatherapy. And he is absolutely fascinated with us and what we're doing, because we're talking about how the senses provide beauty and pleasure. And so it's not just the sipping of the coffee, it's actually the waking up to the smell of the coffee being percolated. There's an old word.
Yes. No, I totally understand. I live in Italy, and I wake up, my husband, the first thing he does is put on the coffee.
Well, it triggers memories. It triggers so many things as in humans. So, it's really about understanding. It's exciting times right now to be able to really kind of look into the brain and see how the brain reacts to these types of environments. And that's what science and neuroscience people are doing for us, because obviously, in our industry of interior design and architecture, that's not, the area that we specialize in. But to be able to understand the human, what excites them, how it triggers memories, pain trumps gain in the ancient brain. Why? Because we're always looking for, we're trying to avoid painful situations.
You sound like a rapper, Linda.
Do I? So we're always trying to avoid painful environments. So, if you can design understanding the human and what triggers us, then you're going to be more successful at creating environments that are healing.
Okay, so I'm going to be a bit cheeky with this question, because sometimes I think it's a bit overlapped, because we know that beauty is personal, and it is also influenced by our personal history.
And
Okay.
our culture. And our
And
culture.
our culture, of course. But at the same time, we also say that going back to our subliminal, to our ancient minds, if we look out on nature, nature is beautiful for everyone.
Mhm.
So if nature is beautiful for everyone, when and how does the personal come in? Do you see what I mean?
Mhm.
You know,
No, I
there's a
think
certain overlap, which
I
is
think yeah, I think
difficult.
well, it is difficult, but I think that nature. I might take a small exception with nature is beautiful for everyone because we're going to appreciate. It could be a matter of degree. Some of us are going to appreciate some aspects of nature more than others. If you were born and raised in the Andes or in the Rocky Mountains or in that kind of a terrain, being surrounded by palm trees may not have the same impact with you. Or if you were born and raised surrounded by palm trees, living in a world of snow would not be attractive to you. Now that's kind of, I'm not sure I'm actually right here, but I think each of us is going to find pleasure and personal reward in different images of nature. We're all not going to like the exact same thing. Although you could throw a blanket over the concept of nature and say, indeed, since we were born into nature as a species millions of years ago, it's the most familiar sense that we have to live with.
Okay. So I would take it as nature is, however, according to your history, something that you are attracted to with regards to a static built environment. Do you see what I mean? Rather than cement. Um,
Rather
and
than
then
what?
to
I'm
the
sorry.
rather than cement.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
And then, of
that's a
course,
direct correlation. That what you just said is a direct. That's a little different than what I was trying to explain, but absolutely. Again, go back a million years. We actually have a slide that we show in our presentations. It's a slide with an image from inside a cave, and protected, safe with refuge. And of course, you've heard of prospect and refuge. So we have that slide viewing the prospect of what's outside. Today, the only place we can find that is in a window seat in someone's home, protected. So that's an evolutionary inheritance. But we have to remember that prior to 10,000 years ago, before we began to commune and build cities as a species, the origin of aesthetic beauty was only nature.
Exactly.
And I think it's important to know too that our programming of 50,000 years ago is that hunter-gatherer. We still have that programming in us, even though, we're exposed to all of this latest technology, iPhones, computers, and all these things. We still operate on our old system. We laugh about, always changing out your computers because it's got old operating systems, but the human is still operating on a hunter-gatherer program. And so we've got to really understand, and that's what science and design does, is we help you understand not just what neuroaesthetics is, but help you understand better the human and what excites them, and why they feel better in certain environments versus other environments. Mike's often referenced a really interesting term called stigmataxis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Mike, I'm going to let you explain it.
So you give me the hard word.
Yeah.
Okay, so stigmataxis again is an inherited trait. It's the idea of the fact that we are wall huggers. And so you walk into a restaurant and the restaurant is totally empty. You can choose any seat in the restaurant. Do you choose the one in the middle of the room? No. We choose the one at the table that is up against the wall, and we tend to sit with our backs up against the wall so that we have protection from behind us. And it's a sister discipline, by the way, to prospect and refuge. So we have our backs protected behind us with a view to the rest of the room. And again, that's just that didn't just happen last weekend. That, I mean, that is in our DNA from millions and millions and millions of years of seeking protection and safety and refuge. So when you start thinking about these neuroaesthetic, the convergence of neuro and aesthetic, and realizing that if we started to design for the human-centric human organism need that we have, look at what it would do to change our industry. And this is why science is so excited about what they're doing in better understanding us. And quite frankly, you know, they are begging us to catch up. Linda and I, our role is to be the bridge between science and the world of commerce out there in the world of interior design and architecture. So we're spending a lot of time, and it's a passion on our part right now. It's a love of, truly a labor of love, that we're all the people on this call, for instance. I'm looking at Alex and Claudia and Janet and Mark and so on, and I'm thinking, gosh, I hope they can take something from this and begin to explore the fact that they improve health. If they start employing the science that we know is there, and incorporating it into their business, I guarantee you, because Linda and I are both marketers, we know that the first one into the category owns the category. So the early adopters are going to be the ones to take and run with this. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why, you know, we're developing the certification program that we're launching in October. We have a big symposium coming up in October. So our job is to get the word out. Sorry, Odile, I didn't mean to go on too long on that.
No, not at all, not at all. Listen, I just want to.
I was going to just quickly add to what Mike said about stigmataxis. You know, so many of us, or some of us, love that, you know, big open concept space in America. I can't speak for European design, but that not understanding the human and understanding things like stigmataxis or pareidolia, where about, you know, seeing faces and things, those are really important to design when you're designing, because if you create an environment that is all open concept, your client at the beginning might think that they really, you know, love it, but in actual fact, when they're when that evolutionary inheritance kicks in, and they feel that need to kind of have that wall hugging environment, and you've taken all that walls away, their stress levels, even from an unconscious point of view, are going to start to increase. We know, for instance, you know, if you look at modern design, and I love modern home design, can I live in it? I don't know, because it's got a lot of sharp edges. It's very minimal. It's often, you know, done with monochromatic colors. And so if you create environments like that, some people may thrive in them, but most people may not. And so that's why understanding the science behind design, the science of the human also, are really going to help you design spaces better.
So listen, I wanted to ask one last question, which is very important, however. So obviously your mission, your objective is to get this out to the interior designers, to allow them to apply it so that they can respond better to the needs. So as often happens when we talk about biophilic design, the question comes up is, how do you get your client involved in this?
That's a good question.
Well, I think that, you know, look, every one of us,
because they've got to come on board. You know, when you do biophilic design and you do these things which are beyond the glossy magazine and them saying, I want this, you've got to get them on board.
Well, I think it starts with education. I mean, I think it's important to make sure they understand some of the basic principles of neuroaesthetic design. And I would say that I'm not sure a designer should be using the word neuroaesthetic. You know, I mean, it's one thing for us as the professionals to understand the root of the human-centric design, but it's another thing to know how to explain it in the language of your client. That's what's most important. Speak the lay language. Just like Linda and I, meet with neuroscientists, and as she said earlier, they use these 10-syllable words. You know, we're not using 10-syllable words to introduce the concept to the design industry. We're using the design language. To get your client to understand this, I think a series, and we actually address this in our certification program, but I think asking the right questions is very, very important in that first client meeting. And you know, questions like, how important is health to you at your stage of life? I think that's a very fair question to ask, or at any stage of life. You know, you're 35 years old. Are you sensitive to you know, living a healthy life, and which includes an environment that helps produce health? If you're 65 or 70 years old, you have a different set of health-based needs. You might need handrails, you might need some other things, but what makes you happy? What calms you? These are all questions that need to be formulated and templated for the designer, a designer who will be acting just the same way a doctor would. If you go to a doctor, the doctor sits there for 20 or 30 minutes asking you questions. Well, what are the symptoms? What are the needs? So we have to begin, now that we know we improve health, we need to begin to capture some of the approaches from industries outside of our own in order to begin to build the foundation of the fact of, well, you know, you seem to like vibrant colors, and they calm you, they make you feel good. So here's a design diagnosis that I'm going to give you. That's kind of the approach that needs to take place, Adil. And I would say it's still in its infancy, but it is one of the reasons, just real quickly, it's one of the reasons that we have hired a neurology specialist out of the University of Texas, a major school in this country, dealing with brain function. And she also fancies herself to be a bit of an interior designer. So of all things, a neurology specialist who is also an interior designer. The bottom line is that she's doing a course for us that will help designers learn how to ask the right questions.
Okay, so that is very important. In fact, I think with and correct me if I am wrong or if I am misinterpreting where this industry is going. If before it was, especially for smaller practices, maybe a numbers game. Okay, so I've got to get the quotes out, I've got to do things all via email and just make them fill in a questionnaire maybe and get it out. Now it's almost as if the preliminary, there has got to be a basis of interest, obviously, but the preliminary has got to be like going to a doctor's meeting to understand deep down what it is, because otherwise things can change completely. Am I wrong or am I right?
Linda, do you have a thought on that?
I think, you know, as humans, we're a pain avoiding, and this is, I think, where do I even begin? Because there's so much about the brain, but as humans, we are pain avoiding machines. And so if you're going to go through that diagnosis with the clients, you don't want to emphasize all the beauty and pleasure, and we make beautiful rooms. That's not going to get that client to want to hire your services. What they want is they want you to relieve their pain points. So you really have to understand what is the problems and the pain points. No different than a doctor. If I go to see a doctor, I don't want my doctor to sit there and tell me how beautiful I look. I want them to tell me, you know, how they're going to relieve my pain issue that I'm having. And so that's the same as an interior design professional. You're looking at, you know, that individual or collectively that family. What are the pain points that we're having to deal with, and how do we create an environment that is going to actually make them feel happier in? And, you know, and all of us have experienced it. Whether we walk into a retail store, whether at real estate. Now, I know real estate's different in Europe than it is in North America, but you can walk into an environment and go, I can imagine myself living here. I love this. Or when you go on a trip and you travel somewhere and you go, oh my God, this place is so beautiful. And then you go other places and your guard is up and you feel, you feel unsafe, you feel scared in that. That's what we're really drilling down to and trying to find it. And if you can express that, and bring that through in your, not just in your discovery, but all the way through as you're talking, then you're going to really, build the trust of that client. And that's what it's about too, is about building the trust so that you want to have that relationship with them.
But I still think that, and this strengthens what I am convinced, is that the beginning of the project is going to take over in terms of importance, as opposed
100%.
to, checking the swatches. Do I like the color? Don't I like the color? So, maybe it's not the very, yeah.
You are absolutely right, and absolutely right. The in a way, I come out of the sales business and that discipline, and the first 20 or 30 minutes of any sales call is spent listening, and is spent learning about the needs of the other person, and because you can't satisfy a need if you don't have the benefit to that need. And so it is just an extrapolation of what is in the world of sales. You have to determine what the needs and symptoms are. And I would also dare say that we're already there. There's in North America, there's the Mayo Clinic, and it's a huge medical institution. I don't know whether it's known around the world or not, but it is huge over here. And the head of the Center for Innovation at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Douglas Wood, we quote him. He says, "The future of medicine is in the home." And it's powerful. So anyway, we're very excited about this whole subject, as you can tell. We could talk forever. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're going to have to try and wrap it up. But before we do, I would really like you to tell us a bit about your symposium.
Okay. Well, I was waiting for Linda to jump in, but I'll start, and then Linda can add some color to it. So essentially, over the last couple of years, we've been doing a series of science and design summits around all of North America, and the result was that all of the designer attendees had said, "Look, this is so cutting edge and game changing. We want you to do a certification program." So we're launching the Science and Design certification at the High Point Furniture Market on October 14th. Now, to coincide with that, the day before, October 13th, we're conducting a full day design, art, and science symposium. And we're bringing in several of our faculty members from around the country, and they will be presenting to probably 100 to 120 designers the whole concept of what we've been talking about now. We'll be talking about vast technology. We'll be talking about the health benefits of color and the science and design overall. And so it's a full day symposium, and with lots of CEU credits. Continuing education unit credits are big here in this country. And it's pretty exciting. It's Linda,
in addition to hearing from academia, we also have panels of designers that have already been implementing neuroaesthetics and biophilia into their projects, and so they're going to be sharing information on that, but not just how they do it, but the financial impact that it's had for their own business, and how, and often when you have this kind of information and this knowledge, you can certainly charge more per hour. So they're going to be talking about how it financially impact them by being able to not just create neuroaesthetic and biophilic spaces and how the clients felt, but how it actually supported their business too. So we've got that, and we've also got really exciting. We're going to have a 1 hour experiential session where we've got various workshops, and you can go in and test out the software, and we've got color workshops and so on to help you understand the correlation between that unconscious brain and the design practice. And then the most exciting, I think, is our keynote speaker. We've so exciting to say that we have Suchi Reddy from Ready Made Architects, who was the architect responsible for the design of the Space for Being in Milan. She couldn't wait. I mean, when we asked her, we couldn't even get the whole sentence out before she said yes. She said, yes, I want to be there, because she realizes how important this is, and how much the interior design industry is jumping all over this. So she was very excited to accept our invitation for her to be our keynote.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, that's super. Well, you'll drop me a line and I will put it in the notes, so that if people want to get into contact with you, if you send it to me, before October, because I don't know when the date closes for the
Yes, and I
for the
just want to
tickets.
say that the event is in person. It's at the High Point Market, and for those of you that are not familiar with High Point, it's 11 million square feet. It's half of an entire city that turns its lights on twice a year, October and April, to welcome interior designers and all those that work in the home furnishings industry. And it's been happening in the United States for over 100 years. So it's really the grandfather of all furniture shows. And we will be recording the presentations. We will make it available for people to watch virtually at a later date, but we won't be live streaming. So
Okay.
just want to let you know that you will, if you can't make it to High Point, you certainly can get access to the recordings at a later date.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time, and we are closing spot on the hour. Usually it ought to be 50 minutes, because 50 is the new hour, but there you go. As Mike and you say, it's such an interesting topic that you get caught away and carried away, I beg your pardon. And so many more questions, but I think the best thing is to see you at the symposium.
Thank you so much, Adele. This was very nice of you to invite us.
Thank you.
you.
And for those that want to know more, scienceInDesign.com. Just go to scienceInDesign.com and you'll learn a lot more, and you'll find Mike and my contact information there. You can always reach out to us.
Perfect. We'll put it all in the brief, in the notes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.